Well, hello. Last time we left off, we were just finishing talking about the gymnosperms, the naked seed plants. And I mean, I really have no explanation. I don't know if I'm trying to push the tree over or pretend to be hugging it. I don't know. But anyway, just recognize, again, the three parts of a seed and the value of seeds. All right, now flowers are also significant to plants as well because what they do is act as advertisement. The petals of flowers typically serve to attract pollinators, insects or animals that will help move pollen from the male parts here, the stamen, to the female parts here, the stigma of the carpels. So insects will move from flower to flower. How significant is this? About 1 in 3 bites of food are the result of bee pollination. 1 in 3 bites of food that humans take, I should say, are the result of bee pollination. So tremendously important to the reproductive success of plants. So the flowers are the first part, and then the fruit is the second part of the equation. Now, a fruit is basically matured flower parts. A fruit is the ovary, oftentimes I should say, the ovary of a flower. So when the fertilization occurs in the flower, the ovary ripens into the fruit, and then, excuse me, the ovule that was in the flower becomes the seed, the structure that has the new little organism in there. Now, fruit is interesting because it's a means of helping disperse the seed. So certain fruits can be modified to be sort of light and feathery and be carried by wind. Other fruits can develop into protective coverings over the seeds. Fruits can also serve as advertisement to organisms that will help disperse them. Say, oh, hey, here's a nice meal. Why don't you carry my seed around and spread that all over the place? Sort of like you see here. So animals will eat the fruits, and then the seeds will be spread. Seeds can be attached. Seeds can be passed through the digestive systems. And actually, certain types of seeds have to experience a scarification. It has to be a damage as it passes through the organism's gastrointestinal system before it gets passed out, and that will help cause the seed to germinate. So again, just get the big picture with flowers. Advertising help with pollination, and fruits help protect and disperse the seeds. All right, so angiosperms are those plants that have the flowering structures. You have sort of the old angiosperms, eucots, eudicots, dicots, and the monocots. Now, in terms of recognizing monocot and dicot characteristics, the one thing you need to remember, the one thing you need to remind yourself is that grass is a monocot. That'll allow you to answer all sorts of questions, okay? So monocots and dicots get their names from their seed leaves. The first little leaves that sprout up out of the ground in a seedling, there is either one leaf or two leaves. So monocots have one cotyledon or one seed leaf, and dicots have two. Now, grass is a monocot, as we said. So when you imagine grass coming up out of the ground, well, it's a single leaf, it's a single blade. Now, when they talk about the venation or the veins of those plants, monocots, the veins are in parallel. They all run in a row. Think about a blade of grass. The root system is fibrous for monocots as opposed to taproots for dicots. So again, grass has fibrous root systems. So if you think of this, it helps you work your way through a lot of answers that you may encounter related to the relationship between monocots and dicots. Grass is a monocot. One other little aside, flower parts are in groups of 3 in monocots, but that's neither here nor there. Please make sure you know the flower parts pretty well. The stamen are the male reproductive structures. You have the anther that produces the pollen, and then the filament is a little stalk that holds up the anther. This is easy to remember because stamen has men in it for the male parts. The female parts are the carpel. They can think of those female parts carpooling together. Okay, you've got the sticky stigma that captures the pollen, the slender style, through which a pollen tube will grow, and the ovary. This will become the fruit, and here are the ovules that will become the seeds containing the tiny little organisms after fertilization. Be familiar with certain major features of the reproductive cycles. Again, you have the tissues producing the haploid structures, that can combine to form the new organism. Here you see the pollen grains. Pollen grains will attach to the stigma on the female portion. Then the sperm will travel down this pollen tube that grows until it attaches to what's called the little micropyle here. And then fertilization happens, you get a little sporophyte, so you get a brand new organism growing. Yay. So there are the plants, okay? Now let's back out and take a look at fungi. Fungi is a group that was sometimes confused as being a plant, but is actually its own distinct taxa, or taxon, I should say. These organisms are almost exclusively multicellular, like plants, but unlike plants, they are heterotrophic. They cannot produce their own food. They have to eat others. Additionally, their cell walls are significantly different from those of plants. Their cell walls are chitinous, which is a sugar embedded with proteins, okay? Let's see. Now, evolutionarily, again, heterotrophic. Okay, there we go. Blah, blah, blah. All right, in terms of anatomy, fairly straightforward. This should be an easy one for you. Their bodies are made of little threads called hyphae. If you put a mat of those threads together, they call it a mycelium. There you have it. So again, the hyphae are the tiny little threads in the mushroom, and then you take a mat of those, they call it a mycelium. Let's see, fairy rings, okay. They reproduce both sexually and asexually. You really don't need to recognize anything about the reproductive cycles here. Now, ecologically, they are very important, though, because they are one of the primary decomposers in ecosystems, okay? So with their hyphae, they'll penetrate the tissues of dead organisms and then break down the tissues of those organisms, releasing nutrients back into the environment. So they're the big recyclers. Okay. Additionally, certain fungi can produce substances that interfere with cell walls and bacteria, so they act as antibiotics. Now, one little bit of trivia that works its way in the tests all the time is lichens. For some reason, people love lichens. But lichens are a symbiote. Okay, it's an organism that is a result of symbiosis between a fungus and algae. So little green algae bring to the table the ability to produce food, and the fungus brings to the table the ability to capture water, bring in water. So lichens are this result of a symbiosis. The easy way to remember that lichen is an organism that is created by a symbiotic mutual relationship. It's just this thing that the fungus and the alga lichen each other. Okay, let's see. Again, certain fungi can produce antibiotics. Very nice. They can also, this is sort of crazy, produce substances that will kill organisms so they can thereby digest their bodies. Okay. Ecologically, they're also, or I guess I should say commercially, they have a negative impact on some of the crops we build. And again, the hyphae can be parasitic, so they can actually extend into the tissues of an organism and then sap those. So they may sap the nutrients off of plants, or in this case, they're actually destroying little roundworm. There are the fungi. Finally, the animals. This is a big group here. Okay, so this is a taxon that has quite a bit to look at. Now, these organisms are going to be those that don't possess any sort of notochord or spinal cord. Now, generally speaking, animals are eukaryotic and multicellular, although we may see examples or life cycle stages that have these unicellular stages. Animals are heterotrophic, and animals lack cell walls, which makes sense. Animals need to go and capture food. Many animals, or all animals, are motile at least at some portion of their life cycle. So it makes sense to not have cell walls because they need to have that motility and flexibility. Now, animals evolved from these little colonial organisms called choanoflagellates. They basically have these little beating flagellae that capture food particles. It's one of the primary structures, cells and sponges. So all animal life came from sponges. Now, early on, the development of embryos in the animal kingdom undergo different body patterns, and that leads to different types of body plans. Now, in terms of identifying body plans, there are basically 3 different types of layouts an organism can have. Oops, let me zoom back in on that. My apologies. Let's see. Now, organisms that are acoelomates, a meaning not or without, coel, C-O-E-L, means body cavity. So acoelomates include flatworms. They have no body cavity. There's just a sort of packing tissue that fills the space between the exterior tissue and then the primitive gut. Pseudocoelomates are basically roundworms. They have an external body covering, they have a tube in the inside of the body, and they have some space in here, the pseudocoelom, or false cavity, but it's not lined with tissue. Finally, true coelomates have an external lining of the body, and the internal cavity is lined with this tissue, this mesodermal tissue. Now, this is interesting because what it does is provide a surface to which organs can be suspended within the body. So organisms that are coelomates tend to be more complex. We obviously are coelomates, and you can see this in the section of like a fetal pig. You know, the internal organs of a pig aren't just bouncing all over the place. They're attached to the body wall by this mesodermal tissue. So again, more complex organisms are the coelomates. Let's see. Oops, I feel like I've done this all before. All right, so a number of different groups. What we'll do is in the next lecture go into what some of these groups are.